Just imagine we are going to submit this to FDA. Now I told you in the last class, now FDA will ask a question. What is the tool that you use for analysis purpose? And I told you, according to the FDA guidelines, what the tool you should use? You should use only SAS. You should not use any other tool. You should use only SAS. Now the question is, why FDA recommends only SAS? Okay? If you, I told you should listen to my demo classes in the starting, and I told you FDA recommends SAS because of two important reasons. The first one is data safety and security. The data safety and security. So only with SAS we can have 100% data safety and security. That is the reason, the first reason why FDA recommends SAS. You will not get this much of data safety and security with any other tool. So that's why FDA recommends only SAS. If the data is so safe and secure, what we will do? People like me may manipulate the data. So if I manipulate the data, based on the manipulated data, if I submit the report to FDA, if FDA gives the permission based on the manipulated data, ultimately what will happen? What is going to happen ultimately?
Patient safety. Patient
We
safety.
get compromised. Patient safety will get compromised, isn't it? So there was so many incidences in the past. Some pharma people try to influence the FDA personnel. They compromised because of so many reasons, and they manipulated the data. Based on the manipulated data analysis reports, now FDA has given the permission. Because of that, the drug went into the market. Now, the patient, the subjects, or whoever the disease patient, they started using the drug. Do you know anybody who is the drug? Ravikant? Anybody knows about the drug? There is a drug called
Drug is a biochemical substance that contains active principle, active pharmaceutical principle and excipients that is used to mitigate diagnosis and treatment of a disease.
There is a drug called thalidomide. It is not on, and it is found on the milk. You know what happened? This drug, they did a clinical trial on this drug, and unfortunately, it was not promising during the phase 2. But they manipulated whatever the influence of the FDA person, and they submitted the analysis report, and now, based on the manipulated data, FDA has given the permission to this drug. Okay? And this drug is an antidepressant in pregnant women. It is an antidepressant in pregnant women. Now, people pregnant women started using this drug. In the starting, it was okay, but later on, they started finding babies used to born with impaired organs.
Sir, actually it is for Monday morning sickness, sir, not for antidote.
That is morning sickness, yes. Then, what happened then? Then, okay, so then, FDA started investigating the drug. And then they came to know about that, some people, they manipulated the data based on the manipulated data, and they have given that they got a licensing. And they retracted that one, they did investigation, and then they find that wherever we have the discrepancy, they found that one, and then they banned the drug, and they banned the company for a couple of years, and this is what happened. So there were so many incidences there where the data has been manipulated. Based on the manipulated data, people used to get the permission. So FDA is going to take strict actions, they're going to be very, very strict, and such kind of malpractices. They try to put so much of regulations on the clinical trials, but somehow, based on the loopholes, people used to exploit the loopholes, but still, FDA is going to take a lot of care when it comes to the data analysis. And when it comes to the data safety and security, when you compare with all the analysis tools, SAS is the only tool that can give 100% data safety and security, and that is the reason why FDA recommends only SAS. And the second important reason, in the real time, when we conduct a clinical trial, when we conduct a clinical trial, we are going to collect the data from the subjects. How we collect the data from the subjects? First, we are going to give the drug, before the drug, after the drug, what we are going to do, as I said in yesterday's class, we are going to collect the samples. And of course, before the drug, we are going to collect the sample, and we are going to run the test, as I said, and when we run the test, what we are going to get? We are going to get the test reports, and then I'm going to give the treatment. After the treatment, also I'm going to collect the samples. Again, I'm going to run the test. Again, I'm going to get the test reports. So before the treatment, test reports, we give the treatment. Then after the treatment, we are going to get the collect the samples, and then we do laboratory tests and we get the reports. And then we have all these reports and treatment information from the subject. We collect all this treatment information into a sheet called CRF. What is the CRF? CRF means case report form.
Case report form.
We collect all this data in the CRF sheet. So in clinical trial, 80% of the data we collect from the CRF sheet. Now when we have the data in the CRF sheet, what we do, there is going to be a separate department called CDM, Clinical Data Management. Now this department, what they will do, they will enter the data from the CRF sheet, they will enter the data into databases. They will enter the data into a database. What is a database? A database is a place where we can keep huge amount of data in very safe and secure manner. Understand this one? Now that means, in the real time, the clinical trial data will be present in a database. If the data is in database, now you want to analyze the data, then what we should do? We should get whatever the data that we have in the database, we should get the data into SAS. So the data is present in database, and then what we do? We need to get the data into SAS. And I told you, remember? Not only SAS, whatever the tool that you are using for analysis purpose, first you should get the data from the database into the tool. And I told you that process is called what do you call that? Data access. And once we access the data into the SAS, then what we do? Every time, you do not require all the data. Whatever the data that you require, you should be able to handle only the data. You should be able to capture only the data. And I told you that process is called data management. Remember this one, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So once you're done with the data management, what are the third important steps we'll do? Why we select a tool, why we choose SAS? To the data analysis. What is important? We are going to do the data analysis. That's the third important step. Once you're done with the analysis, what you get now, we are going to get an analysis report. Whatever the report that we have got, we have to submit this report to the regulatory body, or maybe the pharma company, maybe the sponsor, maybe the CRO company. And to that, what we are going to do? We are going to do data reporting. Understand this one, everybody? So we are going to the data access, we do the data management, we do the data analysis, and finally we do data reporting. And if anybody can do all these four concepts at one place, so I told you that is called a complete data analysis tool. called a complete analysis tool. And I told you, only SAS can do all the things at one place. It can do the data access, it can do the data management, it can analyze the data, and it can report the data. Only SAS can do everything at one place. So that means SAS is a complete analysis tool, data analysis tool. So these are the two important reasons why FDA recommending only SAS. So there is 100% data safety and security, and it is a complete analysis tool. And these are the two important reasons why FDA recommends only SAS. And I told in the last class that the reason why we have learned SAS, and then we are into the clinical part. Clear everybody so far?
Yes, sir.
No. Now, once you're done. Now, the next important thing. Yes, when we collect the data, yes, we are going to analyze the data. Previously, all these pharma companies and research organizations, CRO companies, what they used to do, they used to do the data analysis. Once the data analysis, they used to get the analysis report, and they're going to submit this analysis report to FDA. For example, GSK used to submit this report in one way. Novartis used to submit this analysis report in their own format. Sun Pharma used to do it in one way. Sanofi used to do it in a different manner. So Merck used to do it in a different way. Gland Pharma used to do it in a different way. So what is going to happen? Each and every company used to have a different kind of analysis method. So in their own method, they used to do the analysis, and they used to submit the report in their own format to FDA. Now because of that, you have to use so much time to review the application because they never know how the report is going to come. Once the report has come, then they have to put the person there, FDA people into the analysis report review, and then they're going to review that one. Based on the review report, they will decide whether they can give the permission or not. Because of that, FDA used to take so much time because they never know how the report is going to come. Each company used to give us a different kind of style reports. So FDA used to take so much time. Because of that, these pharma companies used to lose so much of time. I told you in the last class, in the starting, if you apply the IP rate, you get 20 years of IP rate. But in clinical domain, time is money. Time is very, very important. If FDA takes so much of time to review the application, when they should get the license, when they should start manufacturing, and when they should, start selling the drug in the market. Because of that reason, now what they did, all the pharma companies, they decided, what they have decided, you should submit the report in a uniform manner. So if everybody submits it in the uniform manner, now FDA is going to come beforehand how the report is going to come, so that they're going to prepare themselves. They're going to prepare themselves, so when the report comes, they're going to review it very fast, they're going to give the outcome very fast. Understand this one? Now all the pharma companies decided they want to submit the uniform manner. Now how to submit it in the uniform manner? How? First of all, if they want to submit the uniform manner, what the FDA requiring? What the FDA is asking for? What they're demanding for? Now FDA is going to have some regulations, some guidance. Now all these pharma companies, they have created a common organization, an independent organization, which is called as a CDSCO. It is a non-profit, open, multinational, voluntary organization. It's a non-profit organization. What the CDSCO will do, CDSCO will go to FDA and they will ask what you require. How do you want me to submit the reports? Now, what the CDSCO will do, they are going to collect all the FDA guidelines. Based on the FDA guidelines, now CDSCO is going to frame set of guidelines. And now the CDSCO is going to give these guidelines to pharma companies. Now pharma companies, they follow the CDSCO guidelines. By following the CDSCO guidelines, the pharma companies will generate the report and then they will submit the report. According to the CDSCO guidelines, now they're going to submit the report to FDA. That is how in 1994, CDSCO has been evolved. It is a non-profit, multinational, open, voluntary organization. Who is going to be in the CDSCO? In the CDSCO, we are going to have people from the different pharma companies worldwide. We are going to have people from the FDA, different government organizations, NGOs, voluntary organizations, research organizations. People from all these organizations, they come and they created one organization which is called the CDSCO. Now, what is CDSCO? CDSCO means Clinical Data Interchange Standard Consortium. We should not call it a consortium. We should call it a consortium. Clinical Data Interchange Standards Consortium. What do you mean by clinical data? The data that we have collected. Interchange. We have to interchange between the pharma companies we have here, or within the two different pharma companies. Pharma companies to different regulatory bodies, or CRO company to pharma company, or pharma company to CRO, CRO to CRO. We have to exchange the data. We have to interchange the data. To interchange this data, we need to follow certain standards. To create those standards, now we have an organization, and that is called in CDSCO, which has been established in 1994. Understand this one? That means CDSCO works between which two organizations? CDSCO works between FDA and pharma companies. So that means if you have any regulation in the CDSCO, from where they have been adapting this one? They have been adapting this one from the FDA. The FDA is which country's body? USA. And now, in India, we have DCGA. In Japan, we have PMDA. Each and every country is going to have a regulatory body. Isn't it? Now, each and every regulatory body, each and every country is going to have different guidelines, different regulations. But if you get an approval from FDA, you can market only in India. But if you want to market in India, sorry, you can market only in USA. Even if you want to market in India, where you should get permission, you should get from the DCGA. If you want to market in Japan, you should get permission from PMDA. If each and every regulatory body have different regulations, for pharma companies, it's going to be very difficult. They need to apply for patent, they need to apply for permission for each country, and it is going to be very difficult for them. Very difficult. It is going to take a lot of time to get an approval. Now, we have one more organization called ICH, International Conference on Organization of Technical Requirement for the Submission of Regulatory Guidelines for the clinical devices or drugs for human use. And what this ICH will do? ICH will try to create a harmony between the countries' regulatory bodies. Now, do you understand what the difference between what the CDSCO doing and what is ICH doing? CDSCO is going to work between the pharma companies and FDA, and ICH works between different countries' regulatory bodies. It creates a harmony, a uniformness between the different countries' regulatory bodies. And that's a different story, and we'll discuss about ICH guidelines and all later, but it's not so important but now. But as a SAS programmer, we should focus more on CDSCO guidelines. Now, it has adapted the guidelines from the FDA. Now, CDSCO is giving 3 important guidelines to pharma companies. And as a SAS programmer, we should focus on 2 important guidelines. The first one is SDTM, and the second important guidelines is ADAM. But I think ADAM, the second year should always be small letter, analysis data model. And the first one is SDTM. You know what it means SDTM? Study data tabulation model. ADAM means analysis data model. And we have one more important thing, tables, listing, figures, or graphs. But I cannot say that these are the guidelines, but we are going to follow this one also. But the series has proposed one more guidelines as a SAS program that is not important for you, but as a clinical data, and it is important. So I told you, how you collect the data from which document you collect the data? Subjects or from the patients we are going to collect the data into CRF sheet, and from the CRF sheet we are entering the data, we are entering the data into the database. And who is going to enter this data from the CRF sheet into the database? Clinical data management. Okay, now how to collect the data? If you collect the data in a standardized format, we are going to have less and less messiness in the data, so that it is going to be standardized data. It is going to be easy to submit the data. Okay, now series has proposed one more guidelines to collect the data, and that is called as a C dash. Clinical data acquisition standards harmonization. Okay, when acquiring the data, what are the standards we should follow? When you're collecting the data, what are the standards we should follow? So they propose certain guidelines. And as a SAS programmer, this is not important for you, but if you want to work at the database level and the CDM level, you need to follow C dash guidelines. So we have C dash, SGTM, and ADAMS. DL is not exactly guideline, but we follow analysis of tables and we do the data analysis. So we create the tables of listings and the figures. Some people also call it TLGs. T stands for one, graph. That means figure, and the G stands for graph. You can call it anything. So what does it mean? That means in the real time, when you collect the data into the database, right now we have the data in the database. In the database we have the data. And the SAS program, remember, in the starting I told you we have SQL Faster program. By using SQL Faster program, what we're going to do, we are going to extract the data from the database into SAS as SAS data sets. Simply we call it as a SAS data sets. We extract the data from the database. And when we have a SAS data sets, here what we should do, now by following SGDMIG guidelines, we are going to create a final data sets, and these are also in SAS format, and these are called SGDM data sets. We are going to submit this SGDM data sets to every. And once you submit the data sets, again, by using the same SGDM data sets, what we are going to do, by following ADAMIG guidelines, we are going to create ADAM data sets. And once you create ADAM data sets, then we are going to, by using this ADAM data sets, we are going to do the data analysis. By doing the data analysis, what we are going to do, we are going to generate reports. So those reports we are going to create in a form of a table. And then we are also going to submit the data sets in a form of a listing, and we are also going to generate the graphs based on analysis, and we submit the graphs. This is the workflow in clinical domain. So we collect the data, we enter the data into the database, then by using as a SAS programmer, we extract the data from the database into SAS. Those are called raw data sets. By using the data sets, we are going to create SGDM data sets. By using the SGDM data set, then we are going to create ADAM data sets. And after ADAM data sets, what we are going to do, by doing the data analysis, we are going to generate the tables, listings, and the graphs. Now, as a clinical SAS programmer, now you can work at the SGDM level. As a SGDM programmer, you can work at ADAM level as a ADAM programmer, and you can also work as a data analyst. We call it a statistical data analyst or clinical data analyst, so that we can generate tables, listings, and graphs. There are going to be around 9 to 10 different positions in this flow of the data. As a SAS programmer, you can work in any of those positions. So we are going to take you to that level. You can apply for anything as a SGDM programmer, or simply as a programmer, or as a separate data programmer, or end-to-end, both in production, validation. Along with this, we are going to have data validations, specifications, validation, Delegate 21 metadata, submissions. We have so many other also. All these also that is suitable for the SAS programmer. So you have learned base SAS, most of you guys have learned base SAS, and now by using our base SAS skills, how to convert SAS raw data sets into SGDM data sets. Again, SGDM data sets into ADAM data sets. By using our SAS skills, we are going to convert it, and we are going to submit the data to FDD. Here, remember, this is what we are going to do in the next 2 to 3 months' time.
I have a question.
Yeah, everybody. Is there someone out there?
I have one question too.
Yes, Manish. Statistical programmer from Rolando, statistical programmer as a SAS programmer, in some companies they call it a statistical programmer. Only, all you need to have a bachelor's degree. Okay? In this case, say like a biostatistician. Then you should have an MSc statistics or statistics PhD in statistics. Okay, biostatistics generally, who is the most suitable person for SAS programming? The most suitable person is BSc or MSc statistician. Okay? But since we use SAS in clinical domain, so if you want to have a proper domain knowledge, MSc BSc statistician may not have that. So as a pharmacy student, now we are going to have that domain knowledge, and I think in our curriculum we are going to have at least one academic paper like a biostatistics or something. Yes, now if you want to become a statistical programmer or clinical SAS programmer, all you need to have a bachelor's degree. Nowadays, most of the universities they are incorporating like at least one paper in every graduation statistics, and then BCom graduate or like BSc. Nowadays, like BCom and MCom graduate, we have at least one statistics paper because statistics is so important. If somebody asks me like what is the future, which course that you want to pursue, I can tell you 100% statistics is the future. Data analysis is the future. What do you know? How to do data analysis? By using statistical concepts. Statistics is very, very powerful. Okay? Okay, sir. Thank you. And somebody tried to ask some question?
Yeah, that was yes. Yes, sir. So I just have a question as far as like as a clinical SAS programmer, you said we receive like a raw data set from CDM teams. So those data sets will be always like in a SAS file, or will be a CSV file, or Excel, or what is it?
It is always going to be SAS format.
SAS format. Okay.
Yes, SAS data set. Occasionally, for academic reports, or if you want to do analysis, sometimes you may get the data in Excel format or CSV format. But most of the times, in most of the companies, they're going to give the SAS data set, SAS format only. Okay. But sometimes, as a SAS programmer, it is able to be, you have to extract the data from the database into the SAS. Do you know SQL Faster program? In the broadcast scale, connect it to database name. Whatever the database they are using, we should write the database name. Okay. And then we are going to give the user is equal to your username. So, for example, my username is Srinivas in my company, and I should give the password. The password is equal to I should give my password. And then we should write a statement called create a table. Table name, which table name you want to write it, and I want to have a table in 5 words. As select star from, again you should write a connection to the database name again one more time. Again within the parentheses, what we should write now? Again you should write select star from whatever the table name that we have in the database, you should write that. Say for example, in the database I have a table name called me, and I'm writing that me, go to the parentheses, keep a semicolon, you should write it's connected from the database name, and create it. Say for example, in my system, you can have a name database. if I execute this program from SAS to SAS, now I'm going to connect to the Wave database. In the Wave database, if I have a AE table, from the AE table, I'm going to extract the data and I'm creating a data set called AdWords in SAS. Okay. Shravani, you're sharing your screen. Yes. Understand this one?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes. Thank you, sir.
But this is the code that you write. Automatically, you're going to get AdWords data set in SAS format. Now, this is a raw data set. We use this data set to generate STM data sets. Okay. I'm going to provide you these raw data sets, which have been extracted from the database. So from there onwards, we are going to do our journey. Okay. Clear, everybody so far? Thank you. Okay. Now, say for example, you are working at your CRO company, and from a sponsor company, you got a contract. Say for example, Pfizer is a sponsor company. Of course, Pfizer is a sponsor CRO also. Say for example, I will take AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca, you know what they did? Recently, they did the clinical trials, annual clinical trials, and they got approval from the FDA, and they submitted an IND application, and then they got approval from FDA. They said, they can go with your clinical trials. Now, what did AstraZeneca will do? AstraZeneca is giving that clinical trial project to the CRO company. You are a CRO company. Now you got this contract. On behalf of AstraZeneca, you want to conduct the phase 1 study. If the phase 1 study has been successful, then you want to conduct the phase 2, and then phase 3, and so on and so on. Now, when you get a contract from a sponsor company, as a CRO company, how we are going to approach it? What we are going to do? How we are going to conduct a clinical trial? Whether it's a phase 1, or a phase 2, or a phase 3, or anything. How we are going to do that? Now, we are going to see what are the important steps that we do when we are conducting any clinical study. Say, for example, you're an expert at CRO company. Now, recently you got a contract from AstraZeneca to conduct the phase 1 study. Or say, for example, the phase 2 study. Okay? Just imagine. Now, how we are going to conduct the clinical trial? How we are going to do that one? When we got a contract like this one, when we want to perform any phase 1 or phase 2, the first thing that we are going to do, I mean, in your bachelor's degree or in your graduation, if you're into a lab, a chemistry lab or a physics lab, any lab, biology lab, if you want to conduct an experiment, what do we do? First thing, what do we do? What is the first thing? How are you going to conduct an experiment?
Give me an objective.
First thing that we are going to write a protocol. Isn't it? First, we are going to write a protocol. What is a protocol? A protocol is a detailed document. From the starting to end, what is our objectives? What are the disease synthesis? What is the rationale? What is mode of action? Then what are the procedure steps that we need to conduct? And finally, what is the summary of the report? Isn't it? So in a protocol, you are going to have aims and objectives. Then you are going to have disease synthesis. Then you are going to have the procedure step by step, what we need to do. And then finally, we are going to have the report. And finally, we are going to get a summary. In the same way, the clinical trial is also an experiment. When we want to conduct an experiment, the first thing that we need to do, you have to write a protocol. A protocol is a detailed document from the starting to end of the clinical trial. So my strong recommendation is, before going into the job interview, you have to read at least one protocol. And I'm going to give you 3 to 4 protocols. I'm going to give one protocol on diabetes. I'll give you one protocol on hypertension, and I'll give one protocol on respiratory asthma, and I'll give one protocol on intestinal cancer, so oncology project protocol. And I strongly recommend you please go through at least one protocol. Protocol is going to give all the information. It is going to give the terminology, domain knowledge, and strongly recommend you reading the protocol. The first thing is, when you open the protocol, what is the first thing that we are going to have? You are going to have the title of the project. The title is going to have some important keywords. By reading the title, you can understand what important is. And this is how we are going to have. It is a phase 2. So tell me, if it is a phase 2, what do you understand this one? That means you can understand, yes sir, it is a phase 2. That means I am looking for the safety and efficacy, and I am doing this on the patients. Isn't it? And then we are going to have, it is a phase 2. Then we are going to have keyword called double blind. And then we are going to have randomized. Then we are going to have a crossover study. You don't know what you mean a crossover. I'll explain that one later. So these are the keywords we are going to have. So it is a phase 2, double blind, randomized crossover study to prove since it is a phase 2 study, the safety and efficacy. Of course, in phase 2 also we are going to look into the efficacy. The safety and efficacy of some XYZ drug. Like I'm going to have like this one, X1091, some kind of a code, drug. Comparing with some study treatments. For example, what is the very common drug that we use in diabetes test? Diabetes test? Metformin. Comparing with metformin in diabetes medical students, type 2, TD2 diabetes medical patients who will be in line with the insulin or something. So all of this is how we are going to have a table. So the title is going to have all the important keywords. So, if you go into the pressure or 1 or 2 years experience, so you're going to get a question on your title. Tell me what is phase 2. Since you said that your title is phase 2, tell me what is phase 2. What is double blind? What is randomized? And what is the crossover study? What is the standard drug that you are taking or controlled drug that you are taking? How many what type of patient population that you are taking? And in your resume, you are going to get a title. And of course, from tomorrow onwards, we are going to do faster diabetic study. Now we are going to write a title. So title is going to give you clear information, and you should understand what is the title, what are the keywords that you have. If you have phase 2, what are you going to have other than the phase 2? If you have phase 1 or phase 3 or phase 4, if you have double blind, what you can have single blind or triple blind or open label. Or instead of randomized, what you're going to have non-randomized. The meaning is to randomization, you will not be randomized there. Instead of crossover, instead of crossover, you're going to have a talent. And again, I'm using a comparative drug which is already present in the market, but for sometimes if I do not have it, the comparative I'm going to go with the placebo. And I try to diabetes medical students, the patients. So the first thing that you can understand is the protocol. Okay, title. Once you're done with the title, then in the protocol, we are going to have what is the primary objective of the study. Each and every study is going to have a primary objective. Okay? So what are the main primary objective of the phase 2 study? Efficacy. And how we can do the efficacy? What is the efficacy in a patient, in a diabetic patient? For example, my study is a 20-week study. 26-week study. Okay? In this, by the end of the 26 weeks, what is the blood glucose level of my patient? If there is a reduction in the blood glucose level after my treatment, and that is the so that I can prove yes, my drug is working, then the efficacy of my drug. So, for example, at the starting, the patient has got blood glucose level 450 mg per ml or something. At the starting of the treatment, he has got 450 mg per ml, and I have given the treatment for 90 days. After 90 days, in between, I'm going to do interim analysis by the end of the study for 90 days. So, once the blood glucose level come down to 200, yes, I can say my drug is working, so that I can prove my drug is effective. So when it comes to the diabetic drug, the reduction in the glucose level, or maybe, so I'm going to have antibody AD, what do you call it, IgM or something like that. I'll tell you later all these concepts. So yes, sir, we need to go efficacy, how the drug is going to, and what kind of action it is having. Is it working on the glucose levels or something else? And you should write the primary objective. And the moment the study is going to have only one primary objective, but later the next important thing what we do, you now write the secondary objectives. Okay, and each and every study is going to have multiple secondary objectives. You should understand. Say for example, the primary objective of this current study is a reduction in the blood glucose level, and my secondary objective is a reduction in the serum creatinine, because creatinine also plays very important role in diabetic patients. And blood urea and blood urea and reduction in the serum creatinine and blood urea are the secondary objectives. And I have one more secondary objective. Say for example, if the patient is having any hypoglycemic symptoms, and I'm going to look into that one also. Do not worry about this one. I'll explain each and every concept later. So each and every, what I want to say here, each and every study is going to have one primary objective, multiple secondary objectives. That information can find in the protocol. So that's why whenever you go for interview, these opposite can tell me what is the primary objective of the current study, what are the secondary objectives of the current study. And along with that, you need to understand we are going to have endpoints. So you should understand the endpoints as well. What is the primary endpoint of the study? What is the secondary endpoint of the study? So for example, if you have a study like this one, it is a 90-day study, and I'm going to give the 90-day treatment to everybody. Then the subject calls, for example, some 101 subject, a patient in the starting has got 450 mg per ml. It's a 90-day study. According to my study protocol, every day morning after lunch I should give one tablet, after the dinner I should give the one tablet. That is the study protocol. But by the end of the 50th day, this person, 101 subject, came to normalcy. Now his glucose level is pretty much normal. Am I going to continue the treatment? No. If the patient is normal, you can give that against, you can give the diabetic drug. It is going to become hypoglycemic or some other problems. So we are going to set some endpoints. Then you should stop the treatment to a subject. It has been come to normalcy. You should not continue the treatment, you should stop there. You should ask them to leave because he is already normal. So we are going to set some endpoints, and you should tell what are the endpoints that we are asking us. That endpoints again you can find in the protocol. So what are the primary endpoints, what are the secondary endpoints, and then we are going to have the study design. What is the study design? How many days we are going to take the treatment? How many subjects that we are selecting? Is it a randomized or non-randomized? What kind of blending that we are following? Is it a placebo control or study control? All that information we are going to have in study design. You should read the study design as well. And apart from that, how many visits that we have in the study? In each visit, what kind of information that you should collect? We are going to have all that information. And one more important thing is, say for example, I am conducting a phase 2 study here in Hyderabad at NIMS Hospital. It's a diabetic study, phase 2. Now, I have given a couple notification, a notification, say I am conducting a clinical study on diabetic patients. If you are interested, you can enroll yourself, you can participate. So since it's a phase 2 study, according to my study protocol, I want to have 700 patients, 700 subjects. So I have given the notification. And around 1,500 members have been enrolled by themselves. And then why people enroll in a clinical trial? Because some people, they want to contribute something to the society. Some people, they say like, I'm going to give a free medication, free food on each and every visit, and I'm going to offer some money for each visit. Because of all these benefits, some people will enroll themselves in the clinical study. But whatever the reason, 1,500 members have been enrolled. Am I going to give treatment to all the 1,500 members? No. So we have been enrolled. Am I going to give everybody to my treatment? Even. No. I want to have 700 members. So 700 members enrolled themselves. No, I'm going to call the 700 members? No. I told you in the starting, my study is a phase 2 study. In the phase 2 study, what kind of subjects I need to take? Patients. I need only diabetic patients. So when 700 members enroll themselves, do you know, are you sure that these 700 members are diabetic patients? You don't know. Then what we are going to do, we are going to screen these 700 subjects. We are going to check the eligibility of the 700. How we are going to select the eligibility? How we are going to determine the eligibility? Now, in the protocol, we are going to specify some very important inclusion criteria. We are going to inclusion criteria, and we are going to have some exclusion criteria points. Based on inclusion and exclusion criteria, we are going to select a patient to a treatment, to a study. Understand this one? So in the protocol, I'm going to have some questions in inclusion criteria, and I'm going to have some questions in exclusion criteria. Whoever satisfies this inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria questions, I'm going to select only those subjects into my treatment. Now, according to my study protocol, I have written 3 inclusion criteria questions. The first question I'm writing, for example, the subject must be present, must be, between 18 to 65 years old. Understand? So since it's a phase 2 study, the subject must have blood glucose level, must be diabetic patient. Because it's a phase 2 study, I can give only diabetic patients. Understand? Diabetic patient. Now, I'm going to do one more. So for example, I'll get only 2 questions. Now I'm writing some exclusion criteria questions. Where I'm writing, the subject should not be pregnant or not planning pregnancy for next 6 months. This is the question I'm writing. And the second question I'm writing, the subject having a cardiac problem should not have any cardiac problem. Okay, and the subject should not be allergic to any kind of drugs. So I have the inclusion criteria questions in the protocol, and if you want to select any subject into your study, whatever the inclusion criteria question that you have, you must answer yes to that question in order to get selected into your study. All the inclusion criteria question answer must be yes. In the subject having age between 80 to 65, it has got age between 80 to 65, yes, then you should select. In the subject is a diabetic or not? If it is a diabetic, yes, then we are going to select. How we can prove that it is a diabetic or not? We are going to conduct some screening test. We are going to conduct a glucose test. If it is proven that you have got diabetes, then you select. So that means in order to select, we are going to do some screening tests based on that we are going to select. And again, whatever exclusion criteria, the question that we have, the subject must answer. The answer must be no. Then only you are going to take the subject. The patient should not be a pregnant woman or a lactating mother, or should not planning for any pregnancy for next to 6 months or 1 year. Depends on my study. Should not be a lactating mother, not a pregnant woman. So if they say yes, I'm not going to take. If they say no, I will take. And again, subject is having any cardiac problem, yes, and I will take. I will not take. If they say no, and then I will take. And I will not believe them. So again, what I'm going to do? Yes, I'm going to do the pregnancy test, and then I'm going to conduct the cardiac ECG or some angiogram or something. Based on that, I'm going to decide whether the patient is in cardiac or allergic to any medication? So, inclusion exclusion criteria is very important. By using the inclusion exclusion criteria, what we are going to do, we are going to screen the subject, and that means we are collecting the eligibility of the subject, and that process is called as a screening. If the positive screening, then we are going to confirm the eligibility, we are going to take that subject into the treatment, into our study. If they are failed in the screening, we are not going to take it. So, how are we going to establish the screening procedure? By using the inclusion exclusion criteria. Understand this one? Where we can find all this information, we can find all this information in the protocol, so that as a CRO company, what we are going to first thing, that we are going to design a protocol. That's the first important thing. Once you completed the protocol design, once you finalize the protocol, who will get involved in the protocol design? The principal biostatistician, the data manager, and the person who discovered this drug, who invented this drug, the principal research scientist. The scientist, the data manager, and the biostatistician, all these together is going to design a protocol. Once the protocol has been designed, the next important step we are going to do, now we are going to design CRF sheet. What we are going to design? We are going to design CRF sheet. Now by reading the protocol properly, now we can understand how many visits we have in our study. Say for example, by reading the protocol, I can understand this one. I have 5 visits in my study. So the first one is called visit 1, then the second is called visit 2, and I have third visit, visit 3, and I have one more visit called visit 4, and then visit 5. The first visit, during the first visit that the subject came, I go to the screen. Because I want to confirm the eligibility, whether he is eligible for my study or not. To confirm the eligibility, I'm going to collect information from him. I'm going to collect his age, and I'm going to collect his height, and I'm going to collect his weight, and I'm going to collect his, for example, gender, and then I'm going to collect his race, or ethnicity. Okay, and then I'm going to collect his historical blood pressure, and I'm going to collect his calcium blood pressure, and I'm going to do the glucose test, and I'm going to do some, 20 or like 200 different tests of tests. According to protocol, conduct all these tests during the visit 1 and get the result. So now what should I do? I need to design a CRF sheet to collect all this information during the visit 1. So I'm going to create an application form in such a manner to accommodate all these test reports. So to collect all this information, now what I'm going to do? I'm going to design a CRF sheet. We are going to have one CRF sheet book for each test subject. And then, what is the information you have to visit? So in the visit 1 compulsory, you have to collect the ECG. And during the visit 3, you do not require visit, ECG, according to protocol. Again, require during the visit 3 and visit 5. According to that, I'm going to design my CRF sheet. Before going to the interview, at least look into the couple of the CRF sheets so that you can understand how a CRF sheet looks like, what information that you collected into the CRF sheet. And I'm going to share a couple of CRF sheets so that you can understand. A CRF sheet is going around 80 to 90 pages book. In the past, we used to have like paper CRF sheets. So whenever we conduct a clinical trial, we used to create a paper CRF sheets, and we used to submit this paper CRF to the investigator, and we used to collect the data from the subject into the paper CRF sheet directly by his own handwriting. But now, paper CRF are not so productive. It will take a lot of time. Whenever we have any error to resolve the error, it will take a lot of time. Just imagine, I'll tell you. So there is a clinical trial. In the clinical trial, they're using a paper CRF sheet. So from the subject, they collected the data into the CRF sheet, paper CRF sheet. Now, whatever the field CRF sheet that we have, this CRF sheet, now one person, we call it the CRO. Now the CRO person is going to get the CRF sheet into CDM department. Now what the CDM department will do? Now the CDM department will enter the data from the field CRF sheet into database. Just imagine. By entering the data, in the CRF sheet, there is a column called case. In the case column, when the investigator is filling that information, he filled that information 23, and then later we overwrite that 3 into 8, and now it's a confusion. It is not clear whether it's 23 or 28. So this paper CRF sheet came into the CDM department. Now the CDM person tried to enter the data. When he entered the data, he entered as 20 because he could see that 28, but actually it was 23, there was a confusion, and he got it out. So if you don't know whether he should put 23 or 28, then what he's going to do, again, he's going to send the CRF sheet back into the clinical site. So through courier, he has to put the concerned paper CRF sheet, he has to ship it back, and again, the concerned person is going to clarify that one, and again, he's going to send it back, and then the CDM person is going to enter the data into the database. Just imagine how many days it will take. Maybe 2 days or 3 days, or maybe 1 week or 10 days. So if you have any mistakes or errors, the resolution of the errors, rectifying the errors will take a lot of time. And one more important paper CRF sheets are, is prone to damage. When you're shipping from one place to another place, so it starts to get damaged. But that's why nowadays e-CRF sheets have replaced the paper CRF sheets. Everybody is using now e-CRF sheets. What do you mean e-CRF sheet? It is an electronic CRF sheet. Everything is going to be online. So the doctor is going to enter the data online. From the patient, the data is going to enter the data online. Now, online, he is going to submit the e-CRF sheet from the clinical side to the CDM team. So everything is online nowadays. To enter, you can do that one. Now, the person who enter the data, now he can check that he can open the online CRF sheet and he can enter the data from the e-CRF sheet into now the database. While he's entering, if he has got any doubt, within seconds, he can raise a ticket to, he can raise it down to the clinical site. Within seconds, he's going to clarify that one. Within seconds, he will come back to the CDM team and he's going to resolve that issue. Within minutes, we can resolve that issue. Because everything is online, you don't need to ship it back and you need to get it back away, so everything we can do online. So the resolution of the errors are going to be very, very fast. But what is the problem with these e-CRF sheets? What is the problem? When the investigator is entering the data from the patient to the CRF sheet, what is the guarantee that this is the genuine data? Because everything is online, right? We don't know who is entering the data into the CRF sheet. Do you have any authenticity for that one? Do you have any guarantee that this data is correct data? If it is a paper-based exam, you should go to the exam center and you're going to have all tickets and all ID proofs that you're going to have, and according to the exam, the investigator is going to check that one and he will allow to the exam center so that you get an exam. So that there's a guarantee that the right person, right candidate is writing the exam. But it's an online exam. Is there any guarantee that the right genuine person is involved in the exam? No. Then how to avoid such malpractices now? Now that is why in every year, like how we have Indian Constitution, we have Indian Constitution, right? In the same way, in USA we have USA Constitution. What is the thing? They call it the name CFR. What is CFR? Code of Federal Regulation. According to this Code of Federal Regulation, there is a clause called 21 CFR Part 11. 21 CFR Part 11. According to this 21 CFR Part 11, what is the city going to tell you when you're doing online data, when you're filling online data, what are the steps that you should take to maintain, to say that the data is genuine or not? All this electronic signature, facial recognition, OTPs, biometric, all this comes under this CFR part 11, 21 CFR part 11. That means when you're entering the data online, you want to know that one. That is a genuine data, the right person is entering. So now, according to the 21 CFR part 11, we have established all these electronic signatures, OTP system, capture system, password system, biometric, and facial recognition, all these steps that we take to have the genuinity of the, to maintain the genuinity of the data. Understand this one, everybody? So, whoever entering the part data, we are going to give only that person authorization to enter the data. And if database is here only, you enter the data under the tab, you want to type, put a signature so that there is going to authenticity that the right person did the source or investigate this data. But online no, a signature, so now we have electronic signature concept now. Understand this one? So we are going to have validation concept, we are going to have audit trail, and we are going to have legacy systems by following all these, we are going to maintain that one. And then as a SaaS programmer, as a clinical, as a person will when dialing, so when I'm doing the account, the 21 CFR part 11. When you're joining any company, so in the first 1 month, you're going to have a SOP training. In the SOP training, one of the training, we're going to have 21 CFR part 11. You have to read the people is given by the company, and at the end of it, you have to involve in an exam, you should pass the exam, so that they can understand that yes, we know that 21 CFR part 11. Clear, everybody? So this is how we are going to design a CRF sheet. Once the CRF sheet, by the way, when they're designing a CRF sheet, they are going to do the discussions with the clinical side team, because yes, I'm going to design a CRF sheet, but whatever the information that I'm putting in the CRF sheet, is it possible in the real time to collect all the data or not? So while in the CRF sheet about the protocol, we should collect the XYZ test, and we need to collect XYZ test the risk report. But is it possible to do the XYZ test? Do we have the equipment, and do we have the reagents or the diagnostic kits? We are going to consult with the clinical side people, with their permission, by doing all the discussions, then we are going to finalize a final CRF sheet. Understand this, everybody? Once you have finalized the CRF sheet, then the third important step that we are going to do is we are going to do database designing. Okay, we are going to design a database. Now with the CRF sheet, once you finalize the CRF sheet, with the CRF sheet and protocol, now you go to any database company. Now the database company, based on our CRF sheet and protocol, they are going to design a customized database for our clinical trial. So there's going to be a database company called Oracle or Medidata, and we have eClinical Suite. There are going to be other clinical Oracle. We have so many other database companies, and you can go to any database based on your requirement, your financial things. Based on that, we are going to go to any one database company. Now the database company will design a customized database, which is we can accommodate your current state. And we'll discuss about those databases, companies, and designs, and there are many concepts in tomorrow's class. Clear, everybody? Up to this point, is it okay? Do you guys have any doubts?
Yes.
Clear, sir. Okay, then we'll continue in tomorrow's class. Okay, see you tomorrow. And later we have a class now.
Oh,